Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. A few housekeeping rules before we start. So, please, this is a reminder that we're streaming live. So, we would appreciate if your devices were put on mute to decrease the chances of interference. Please, as well, if you have any questions, post them directly to me or in the chat, and we'll try to answer them within the break, so at the end of the presentation. Thank you. So the topic for today's seminar is the man, the only. Feel free to invite your friends and family to join, and hope you enjoy. Over to you, Dr. Pandit.
Thank you. And first, a sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So now let's get on to the topic. I'll share my screen with you. Oh, just a moment. I will have to get. Just give me a moment. I'll get to the place where we're supposed to be. And then we will. Here we go. So let's get back to this. And now let's do share screening. Here we go. All right, here we are. The man, the only, that's the title of this afternoon's presentation. Now, we saw some parts about this during the last so many days. But here we're going to just focus on a very specific statement that Dale Carnegie said. And here's the statement. Jesus is not one of the group of the world's great. Talk of Alexander the Great and Charles the Great and Napoleon the Great, if you will. Jesus is apart. He is not the great. He is the only. Why would Carnegie Simpson say these words? Now, anybody is allowed to make a conclusion. So this is what his conclusion is. But when we read it, we can accept it as a conclusion, but we cannot accept it as something that we will take it for ourselves until we do a little research to find out why he said these words. And I believe there may be some reasons. And so we're going to look today at 7 reasons why somebody might turn around and put those 7 together and say that he is not the great, he is the only. Here's number 1. His unique entrance into history. He claimed to come from another dimension. And so for him to come to our dimension of space and time is to get into our history. So here's how he got into our history. It was predicted that he would come in a certain way. And the prediction was this. It is found in the book of Isaiah 7:14. It says, behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son and shall call his name Emmanuel. El is Elohim, God. Emmanuel means with, persons, humans. So the meaning of that word is God with humans. And here's the way the writer has described it. The Lord himself shall give you a sign. Now the word virgin out here is in the Hebrew, the word is Alma. Now Alma can be translated as just a young maiden, or it could be translated as a virgin. Why would the writers then use the word virgin today? It's because of the next words that are there. The Lord himself will give you a sign. Now, a sign means something that is a little out of the ordinary. You can't give a sign that is happening every day, for example, or it's all the time. For if I gave you directions to my house and I say, here's the sign at which you will turn to the right, then you'll get to my house. And the sign is this: there will be a tree with green leaves on it. Hey, All the trees in that whole along that whole road had green leaves. So which tree shall I turn right at? If you give a sign, it's supposed to be something unusual. You must say the tree that has white leaves. Okay, then you can see it from a distance. What are we saying? We're saying that a sign is something that is very different from the ordinary. If it is just Alma, meaning a young maiden, then a young maiden getting pregnant in the regular way is not a sign. Then there'll be millions of signs. No, the Lord Himself will give you a sign. And so, if the Lord is giving the sign, it has to come from a supernatural dimension. It has to be very, very unusual. And also, it could not be duplicated. That is the meaning of a sign. And, the fulfillment, for example, we could have challenged the fulfillment if we would have identified both the parents of Jesus, both mother and father. Then we say, he's just born like anybody else. But we saw that he was called illegitimate because they could not identify the father. They searched high and low. They knew who the mother was, not the father. So, in those circumstances, we had already said the other day, it could be that the reason we don't know his father is because his father was from another dimension. He was God. Father was never identified. Now, here's what is the words. It's not just the virgin will conceive. The real words are the virgin is pregnant. And in other words, despite the pregnancy, the mother is still considered to be a virgin. Did you know that the virgin birth of Jesus, Isa, is described in the Quran? Yes, in another book, in another religion. Surah 19, ayat 19 to 21 says the description. The angel came and spoke to Maryam, and she said, how can I have a son when I have never known a man? And the description is that it can happen. And so the description of a virgin birth is there even in Islam. So his mother conceived him while she was yet a virgin. He had no paternal father. The virgin conception and birth of Christ is utterly unique in human history. It was predicted. The prediction also makes it different. In mythological stories, there are people, women who were virgins who brought forth children. The difference here is that this is written not in a mythological book. That is why, friends, the first question we asked was, what kind of literature is this? Is it legendary? Is it mythological? If it is mythological, well, then yeah, we don't have to believe this. But since it is written in a historical, not just historical, the best attested historical piece of literature in the world, then we cannot dismiss it. Number two, it was predicted. And the fulfillment is at least left open because we cannot identify the father. Now think if you were the prophet who prophesied, would you really prophesy somebody being born from a virgin? It's kind of physiologically ridiculous. So why would you make that prediction unless you were inspired to make that prediction? And once the prediction is made, we should see whether it's fulfilled. Really, the only fulfillment that we see in a historical piece of literature is the New Testament and the story of Jesus. So getting into our history was in a very unique way through a virgin birth. Unique in sinless perfection. We compared with him with the other founders and found every other founder fell along the way. Some point, some major point in which his life did not match his teachings. This person was different. His self conscious purity is astonishing because none of us can do that. We can't look into our lives and find out how wonderful we've been, how perfect we've been. No, we sink before we even start. We know that we will never make the grade. But when he was looking at those who were thirsting for his death, I mean, his sworn enemies, he said, can you find anything wrong with what I have done? Can you? What was the response? Silence. History does not offer us any other parallel where a person looked at his bitter enemies and challenged them to find one fault and they could not. So it's astonishing that he could look into his own life and say, no, you cannot find because I cannot find. He and he alone carried the spotless purity of childhood, untarnished through his youth and manhood. 15 million minutes of life on this earth in the midst of a wicked and corrupt generation. Every thought, every deed, every purpose, every work, privately and publicly, from the time he opened his baby eyes until he expired on the cross, were all approved of God. Never once did our Lord have to confess any sin, for he had no sin. David Strauss, the author of this statement here, was once upon a time an antagonist to the Christian faith. And he was a brilliant thinker, a brilliant orator. So he would get with his brilliant mind and his brilliant arguments and just slash down Christianity. In fact, they called him slashing brilliance because he would slash everything. That was in his young, energetic days. Later on, they, just like Napoleon, they asked him, why don't you go under the superficial layers and look deeper? And this is what he said. He remains the highest model of religion within the reach of our thoughts. And no perfect piety is possible without his presence in the heart. Here's a person who looked and studied, and this is his change. What else is significant about this? It's this: piety might be possible, according to this statement, in following any of the other founders. Yes, you can be pious, but perfect piety is possible only with Jesus because he himself was perfect. Sinless perfection and perfect sinlessness is what we would expect of God incarnate. Remember what we said? He comes from there, he is God. So he brought the message in himself. So he said, I am the message. And if he is the message, then he would live along in line with the message. That's exactly what we find. And this we find in Jesus. The hypothesis and the facts concur. So, sinless perfection, yes. Number two, or rather number three, miracles. First, we need to describe what miracles are, because many people say there are no miracles at all. So we will define miracles by saying that these are acts of God, not just unusual things which we cannot explain. They are acts of God which humans cannot explain. But the real meaning of miracles is that God acts. So if you don't believe that God exists, then there are no miracles. And that's exactly what people say. Those who don't believe, they say, no, miracles are impossible. Why? Because God can't be doing it because he's not in existence. And what you call miracles, one day we will explain them. We just don't know enough today. So we define miracles as the acts that God did. Did Jesus perform miracles? How do we check whether they're unusual acts? Well, if they're from God, then the person must attribute it to God. That's number one. And number two, it should be seen so that we can see that it was really a miracle. Miracles have been noted in many religious and mythological writing. That is true. But these five differences we will see now show the difference between the miracles of Jesus and the miracles of others. Number one, they were not embellished. They were not given the prominence. They were not given extra words of descriptions to just grip you. No, they were not described with fanfare. They were simply called works. The Greek word is erga. Erga means just work. Now think, why would they just use the word work? Why not say it's something wonderful and big and, whoa, wow? No, they didn't say that. It's work. Do you know why? I think it's because of this. He was unusual. He was superhuman. So for him, doing it is ordinary. That is why they said it's just his work. And that makes a difference between the miracles of Jesus and the others, because if you read the others, Miracles, whoa, they are just placed out in front. Boy, look at him. Look at what he's done. This place, no, they're not called even to attention, just called erga, works. Number two, these miracles were done for a very specific purpose. At every time, they were done only for one thing, to help the person in need. He was helping somebody else. It was never to call attention to how great he was or how powerful he was, which is unlike most of the other miracles in the other stories in the mythological writings. They are called they're called to your attention. Look at what we've done. Look at what he did. Here, no. This is a specific thing. I'm doing it for this person. In fact, after he healed some of them, he says, don't tell anybody. Very different from anybody else. Don't tell anyone. Just go and show yourself to the priest and give your offering and the correct sacrifices there, and let the priest tell you that you have been healed. Don't go around telling everybody. Very different. Number three, Jesus' miracles were done openly because they came to him openly. If they had come to him privately, like some of them did, and he healed them privately. But the ones who came openly, he did it. And they were seen by eyewitnesses and reported and recorded in the same generation they were performed. In other words, there was no time for adding features to something that were ordinary and make it extraordinary, something that was ordinarily human and make it superhuman. No, those kind of stories are called legends, and it requires generations to happen. Here, they were written in the same generation. Number four, they have extra biblical testimony. The miracles of Jesus are attested in writings other than the Bible. Number one, Jewish writings. Here's what Rabbi Eliezer Hyrcanus said in about 95 AD. They were talking about the people who were healing in the name of Jesus. And this is what Rabbi Eliezer said. Now, miraculous healings in the name of Jesus imply that Jesus himself performed such miracles. That's logical, reasonable. Number two is Roman writing. This is a secular source now. Emperor Julian, in the mid 4th century, he wrote this and is written down in the writings of the Romans. He described Jesus as the one who would heal the lame and blind people and exorcise demoniacs in the villages of Bethsaida and Bethany. Now, he just didn't say heal the lame, because there are a lot of places that other people could heal the lame and write their stories. Here he specifically mentions villages of Bethsaida and Bethany, meaning this is the story of Jesus. Now, this is the mid 4th century. Much earlier than that, at the turn of the 1st century, there was a Roman emperor. His name was Hadrian. Now, the background to this statement that I'll put on the screen is that about 63, 64 AD, there were Christians in Rome. And there was a big fire in the city of Rome. And Nero, who was the emperor, blamed the Christians. And it started a tremendous backlash against the Christians. They were tortured, they were beaten up, they were killed, and finally they were expelled from Rome. Then a few decades later, these Christians came back to Rome. And so by that time, they were starting to multiply in their membership. And so Hadrian, the emperor, called one of them. His name is Quadratus. And he asked him to justify his belief. And here are the words. Quadratus was asked to defend his belief in Christ before the Roman Emperor Hadrian. These are the words that Quadratus said, which is recorded by a historian. It said, this is what Quadratus said: the deeds of our Savior were always before you. He's talking to the emperor. For they were true miracles, those that were healed, those that were raised from the dead, who were seen not only when healed and when raised, but were always present. They remained living a long time, so that some of them have also lived to our own times. That's an amazing statement. He's facing an antagonistic emperor who would kill him at any moment if he didn't like him. And he's saying, defend yourself. And he says, look, you also know. You can go, in other words, and cross examine the witnesses now. Some of them are living even today. Check them out. The ones who were healed, even possibly the ones who were raised from the dead. So that is why we can believe in him. So, what is this saying? That people were stating this at the highest levels of the government. Yes, there were miracles. We saw them, and you can check them out too. Number three is the Quran. The Quran also talks about Jesus' miracles. In fact, in Surah 5, Ayah 110, he's describing as healed those born blind and lepers and brought forth the dead. Quran. The miracles of Krishna from the Hindu religion are not reported in any other religious writing. The miracles of Buddha are not attested in Islamic writings which came later. The miracles of Muhammad himself are not endorsed by the Sikh literature which came later. Whereas the miracles of Jesus are attested Roman, Jewish, and Islamic documents. Then we ought to give credit where credit is due. Number five, Jesus himself performed the miracles. Unlike Muhammad or Moses, the Quran is stated as a miracle by Muhammad because when they asked Muhammad, Muhammad claimed that he was in the line of the prophets. So naturally, the people said, okay, fair enough. But all those prophets that you talk of, Moses and even Elijah and Elisha, they performed miracles. Why don't you perform a miracle? And in the Quran, Muhammad says, no, I don't perform miracles. So he said he didn't. But he said there's a miracle. The Quran itself is a miracle. But if that's the case, Muhammad didn't perform the miracle. It is Allah who sent it via Jibril. And thus Allah performed the miracle. The great miracle from Moses, we know the parting of the Red Sea. That's the story there. But when Moses said the sea is going to be parted, he said it's not, he didn't say it's my work. He said, wait and watch what God does. None of the others who performed the miracle said that I'm doing it. God did it. Jesus said, I am doing it. I will forgive this person his sins. And you don't believe that because only God can forgive sins. I'm going to tell this person to stand up and walk. It will be a miracle and you will see it. So Jesus himself performed the miracles. Miracles are believed in non-Christian religions because the religion is already believed. But in the biblical religion, miracles are a part of the means of establishing the true religion. That's why we keep saying it was done in public. People saw, you could test it out. This distinction is of immense importance. It was the miracle authenticating the religion at every point. Number four, what were his words like? Remember what we're doing? We're trying to check why did Carnegie Simpson say that he was the only, not just the great? Greatest words. After reading the doctrines of Plato, Socrates, of Aristotle, we feel the specific difference between their words and Christ's is the difference between an inquiry and a revelation. All humans can do is look and search for, and it's good. We should be, like we said, neutral inquirers. Look for this, grapple with this, test it out, check it out. Jesus didn't need to do that. He just stated it as a revealed fact. It's very different, his words. He spoke such words of life as were never spoken before or since. Without writing a single line, he set more pens in motion and furnished more themes for sermons, orations, discussions, learned volumes, works of art, and songs of praise than the whole army of great men of ancient and modern times. That's true. He didn't write anything. And yet today, the greatest amount of literature on earth is Christian literature. They are read more, the words of Jesus, quoted more, loved more, believed more, and translated more because they are the greatest words ever spoken. There was a time when the Jewish priests sent a group of their security guys from the temple and said, go arrest him and bring him here. He's a Jew. He's under us. So these guys went to arrest him. and they came back without arresting him. So the Jewish priests were kind of upset. Why did you not arrest him? And these are their words. No one speaks like this man. We simply could not arrest him. The words that he spoke, amazing, probably powerful. Look at the words Jesus used about his own words. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. Never did the speaker seem to stand more utterly alone than when he uttered this majestic utterance. Never did it seem more improbable that it should be fulfilled. But as we look across the centuries, we see how it has been realized they have never passed away. What human teacher ever dared to claim an eternity for his words? None. Unique, lasting influence. That ministry of Jesus lasted only 3 years. Amazing, right? Just 3 years. How long does it take to make a statement to the whole world such that the people in the world will keep on passing it from generation to generation, decade after decade, century after century, millennium after millennium? Yet in these 3 years is condensed the deepest meaning of the history of religion. No great life after its close excited such universal and lasting interest. The sage and heroes of history are receding from us, and history contracts the record of their deeds into a narrower and narrower page. But time has no power over the name and deeds in the words of Jesus Christ. Here's Napoleon. We saw that he had studied Jesus, and these are his words. Superficial minds see a resemblance between Christ and the founders of empires and the gods of other religions. That resemblance does not exist. There is between Christianity and whatever other religions the distance of infinity. None, according to Napoleon Bonaparte, can compare with this set of beliefs, because this set of beliefs is not just doctrines, it is a person. In the book titled What If Jesus Had Never Been Born, these two authors, James Kennedy and Jerry Newcomb, mention these things, and people take it for granted. But watch. Christians actually were the first ones to set up a string of, of concepts called hospitals. Before, there were places for healing. Yeah, there was a bath here and a physician there. But hospitals, it was Christians who started this concept. There's a hospital where you can all come to, and it will be for so many, and there's a hospital here and another hospital there. The string, that was a Christian concept. How about universities? Similar. In those days, yes, there were universities, but not a string of universities. They were teachers, but not ones who were settled into a hierarchy, into an administration, age old from the Indian peninsula. We know that we had a university long, long ago. It's called Pataliputra from Bihar. Today the name is Patna. Yeah, they had universities, a big library. They had libraries. Alexandria was a place where they had lots of libraries, or at least one big library. But universities where people could come from near and far and learn not only religion, but the other sciences as well, geography, history, maths. That concept, one of the groups that were primarily involved in that were the Christians, pushed by the story and the life of Jesus. Civil liberties, slavery. Do you know Christians were just about the first group that ever stood up and say slavery is really bad? Although they did have servants and slaves in the Old Testament, yes. But when they saw and understood the message of Jesus, they said slavery is wrong. Christians were right in the front. Unfortunately, sometimes Christians are right in the front the other way around. Let's not get caught, my friends. The message of Jesus allows you no liberty to keep slaves. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is actually standards of justice. We feel that, it's revenge, but it's not revenge, it's actually justice. Because in those days, it was not eye for an eye. If you looked at the person wrong, and if he was in a higher position, he could kill you. If you just bumped into them, it was an insult. They could just slash off your arm. At that position, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, foot for a foot, that was real justice, equity, equal. Just because somebody did a little bit wrong, don't bang them up. It was setting the standards for justice. And today, all the justice systems that are clear in the world, especially in the Western world, the jurisprudence says it should be equity. There should be equity, equal. If a person does 2 units of deeds that are wrong, then 2 units of punishment, not 2 units of deeds and 10 units of punishment, or the other way around. Standards of justice and a high regard for human life, it's the same thing. Slaves were considered things. You could treat them any old way. And it was torture that they would just inflict on them at any time, whims and fancies. Christianity came and said, no, you must treat them all as equal before God. That was kind of a revolutionary idea. How can you treat those who are below you equal? But Christianity said, no, you have to treat them equal. And then number 6, transforming unfriendly cultures. Those people out there, kind of savage tribes who live their own way, violence. And if any foreigner comes, well, you can just eat them up. Also, they were cannibals. Who went into those groups to try to change their ways, to become more humane, more civilized? The bulk of it was done by Christians. They would sacrifice themselves and go out there, codifying and writing many world's languages. That's exactly what happened, because they would go inside there. There's only verbal language, only that which is spoken. So they would learn that language carefully and over a long period of time shift it to a written code. How many they have done in the world? Can you see what the picture? One person, his life, the way he lived, told them all these things: hospitals, universities, liberty, standards of justice, regard for human life. You transform those unfriendly cultures out there and shift their vocal, just spoken words into actual written languages. That's progress. As the centuries pass, the evidence is accumulating that, measured by his effect on history, Jesus is the most influential life ever lived on this planet. Number 6, he addressed deep needs. You see, there are many, many heroes and people who are out there in front who want to be worshipped, who want to be admired. They do big things and they do great things. Jesus did great things. But in his ministry, he searched for ordinary things that people desperately wanted. For example, if any thirsts, let him come to me and drink. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Now think, my friends, what is more basic to our lives? What is the more basic wants than being thirsty, being tired? The load is heavy on the mind. It is to this that Jesus addresses himself. If you are thirsty, I am here. If you're tired, if the load is really heavy, come to me. I will give you rest. That is his message. He addressed the naked heart of man and touched the quick of the conscience. And number 7, the big one that we saw the other day, he conquered death itself. When he said that he himself would rise again from the dead, he said something that only a fool would dare say. No founder of any religion known to men ever dared to say a thing like that. We may safely assume that there never was, before or since, such a proposal made, that you can kill me and I will rise again. When asked for a sign, he pointed to this sign as his simple and sufficient credential. What is your credential? By what authority do you teach the people? By the authority that I can handle death. No rabbi, no Pharisee, no other founder can do that. That is my credential. Kill me, 3 days later, I will rise. That was his credential. That was his resume. That was his CV. He who was ready to stake everything on his ability to come back from the tomb stands before us as the most original of all teachers. Here are some words that I wrote out in my book, Come Search With Me. Who can claim to stay that icy hand of death and bring it into subjection? Here the monarch is made to bow low. The emperor is subjugated like a hapless commoner. The mightiest general forced to surrender. Who can stand had been the mournful, desolate cry of history until this lowly peasant, this Galilean carpenter, stepped onto the scene and staked his claim as the teacher of ultimate truth and the undisputed handler of death and destiny. He conquered death. He handled it. The bones of Abraham and Muhammad, the Buddha, Confucius and Lao Tzu and Zoroaster are still here on earth. Jesus' tomb is empty. Life and not death wins in the end. He alone of all men who ever lived conquered death itself. Friends, with this, obviously, he has separated himself totally from every other person who might compete for the top spot. Jesus, the only unique entrance into history, unique in sinless perfection. He performed the miracles himself. He spoke the greatest words that we know of and had the most lasting influence. He addressed deep needs, not just gripped you and wowed you. And then he conquered death itself. 19 centuries have come and gone. And today he is the centerpiece of the human race and the leader of the column of progress. I am far within the mark when I say that all the armies that ever marched, all the navies ever built, all the parliaments that ever sat, and all the kings that ever reigned, put together, have not affected the life of man upon this earth as powerfully as that one solitary life. Jesus is not one of the group of the world's great. Talk of Alexander the Great and Charles the Great and Napoleon the Great, if you will. Jesus is apart. He is not the great. He is the only. Jesus, the only. Question time. We've
Thank you
spoken
so
about
much.
Jesus. Yes.
Thank you. Jesus was really crucial indeed and influential. And his ministry in its simplicity, as you said, addressed the deep needs, and above all, he conquered death. And he was unique, and he's the one, as we are getting to know. Thank you. If it's okay, we're going to ask a question from yesterday before we move on to today's ones.
Just before you go to that, I will just mention one thing about finishing
Okay.
like this. You can challenge what I have said because I'm just stating certain facts.
Yeah.
But here's how you challenge. You don't ask first for what I have said. You go through what I have said, and that's you can see a picture. If you want to challenge this, what you should do as a neutral inquirer, that's the challenge we have, become a neutral inquirer. What you should do is form another theory, another story, put the points there one by one so that we can put your points and these points together. That's the way you challenge. Don't challenge in points right here. Bring your story. And then we will look at both the stories for assessing and evaluating the weight of evidence. Always weight of evidence. Yes, this is challengeable, but this is the way to challenge it. Bring another story, and we will look at it. So when I said these words, I remember during the ending of another seminar session at another place, one of the guys who was sitting there, he was smart. He was very clever. He was watching, he was listening to all the words, and he says, Doc, I heard what you said. Can I ask you? Let's make another theory. He said, how about Zeus? Now, you know who Zeus is? He's the high god, the chief god of Mount Olympus of the Greeks. So they have 12 Olympians. Zeus is the chief. And then, of course, his wife, another goddess, Hera, Hephaestus, and Apollo, and Aphrodite, and all the other 11 gods. But Zeus is the chief. So he came up to me and said, Why don't you check out Zeus and have him also as part of your picture? Why only Jesus? Zeus also. So I said, okay, let's look at that. I said, remember, we have to bring him into the picture. So I said, here's how you bring him into the picture. And if you bring him, oh, by all means, I will look at that. So here are the three things that you will do to bring him into the picture. Can you please find a historical document anywhere in the world that mentions Zeus? Historical, number one. Can you name any one person who actually saw Zeus? That's number two. And number three, Zeus is a big guy. He did all kinds of things. In fact, some of them will be classed as a miracle. Yeah. So here's the third point. Can you vouch that any one of his miracles were actually witnessed by somebody else? There are eyewitnesses to his miracles. If you bring these three, definitely we will consider Zeus. He looked at me and he smiled and he says, Doc, I didn't expect you to answer it this way. Why did he say that? Because he knew there is no way that Zeus could be described in a documented historical piece of literature. Nobody ever saw Zeus. Nobody would be there as a witness to his miracles. So that's what we do. We don't just throw them off. Bring it here, and we will honestly give it a good picture and a good hearing. And then we will make up our decision. Fair enough? All right, the next.
Yes. Thank you so much. So the question from yesterday is that we weren't able to answer is, if human evil must be allowed so that we can have free will, then why did God also create natural evils?
Is the question, why did God create evil? I'm not sure about what he means by natural evil.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. I don't know if the person is here today, but yeah, they said, why did God also create natural evils?
Yeah, number one, your words are right, because he does say in the Bible, I create it. And so he did create the fact that there was something that happened that brought evil. Yes. So he has to be responsible for that as well. No question about it. So the question of why did God do something that was evil? I think we'll just hold it for just a little bit because I'm going to answer all these things that came together, the why questions. Why did God do something? And before, like I said, before we get into that, I'd like to paint the picture so that we can address it in a realistic way. Whenever you ask the question, why, a why question always has some other uh, information based on which you're asking the why. And that information is always negative. We do not ask why if they did it correctly. Think. When we say, why did you do that? We're automatically saying, hey, you did it wrong. So I'm asking you for an explanation. So right away, we ask ourselves, are we saying God did it wrong? Only then we can ask why. That doesn't mean you shouldn't ask, you should. Because it is a real question. Everybody has that. But remember, there's an assumption that is made before you ask the question why. And many times I would suggest go there as well. Check and see whether your assumption was correct. So, for example, he did create evil. Did he make a mistake in doing that? The very question of why seems to say that he did make a mistake. So why don't we ask that first? He did or did not make a mistake. So now there are two theories there. He made a mistake. He did not make a mistake. The reason we're doing this is because he did not make a mistake, then we don't have to ask him why. It was good. So you have to first figure out whether he made a mistake in doing that. That's what I mean by saying a why question always has something behind it, which is the basis for asking the question why. So all those of you who have asked, out of the 33 questions I have in my list, I have them all. 23 of them are why questions, because that's the common thing. Everyone asks why. And nobody sits to realize and ask themselves, I'm asked this question because of a certain piece of information. And we have to first ask whether that piece of information is correct. Will it stand scrutiny or not? I'm not running away from the question because we are going to respond. Why did he do this? But remember, the why questions always have that background to it. Don't run away from the background thinking that you are so unbiased and so balanced that you're just asking a question. No, you're not asking a question. Many times you are saying something. For example, if you ask a person, why are you, why did you steal that? What is the meaning of why did you steal? I mean, you stole. So the first idea there is a statement, not a question. You are saying that he stole. That's why you're asking why. Similarly, whenever you ask a why, you must ask yourself the previous why. Why are you asking why? Not just the statement, but is it a real big question with you, or are you just asking because you just want to know? If it's a bitty little question, here's another question you should put to it. What if I can't answer it at all? Will it make a big difference? Will it? And you'll find that many of these questions are really peripheral, they're troubling, they're vexing, they really irritate. So we are bringing it out. But when you evaluate it, when you place it on the balance, it's not really a big one. We just want it answered, that's all. The big ones, those are the questions you should ask and answer. We will get to this, by the way. So I'm not running away. I'm going to put them all together and answer them because there are at least 7 or 8 who have asked this kind of questions. Why did God do this? Why did he do that? And one of the clear ideas you get when you read these questions, and they are my questions too, by the way. I know because I also said the same thing before asking why. You get the clear idea that you are saying God was unfair, right? Right. I said it myself. When I ask why, I was thinking I'm asking why, but I'm telling that God is unfair. And unless you show that God is fair, I'm going to leave him as unfair. So actually, you have said something. It's not a question. You have said something. So if you have said something, check out that. I will answer them because those are really sometimes vexing questions. Let's go through them at another time. We'll set aside some time for that.
Yeah, thank you. The next question from today, I think, is to do with the miracles. And someone's asking, how can we distinguish a miracle from God in our life? Do we follow the 5 differences you stated between Jesus and the others?
I was distinguishing Jesus' miracles from the other miracles that are written out there. As far as you are concerned, and I am concerned, we defined miracle in a little different way. The people in general will define miracle as something unusual that catches your attention, that does not have an explanation with the laws of natural science. And say that's unusual. So it's a miracle. You get wowed. When a Christian looks at a miracle, it's a little different, almost the same, but a little different. Here's how you check that out. Is it a miracle? A miracle is when you feel and you realize that this was an act of God in your life. So, number one, you have to agree that there's God. Number one. Number two, you cannot explain it. So, it has to be something that is unusual. You can classify it as a miracle. Now, here's probably the question that you're asking, but I don't know. I'm guessing. How do you know it's a miracle from God and not from the other side? Yes, sometimes we don't know. And many times we will not know. So, this is not a question that has been answered really very nicely. Many times we will not know. But you will never be deceived by the God who you worship. If you worship him, you lean upon him, you pray to him, and a thing has come that could be a miracle, then you trust that it is from him. If it is not from him, if it was something that was trying to get you to the other side, and just swing you to that side so that you're no longer on God's side, here's his promise and his assurance. If you are my child, I will never let that happen. No, no miracle can trick you. You will not be tricked by miracles. So you can, in a sense, have a buffer. You can wonder whether it's a miracle or not. And you can ask yourself, but when you're asking yourself, don't just ask yourself, ask God, because you're leaning on the God whom you worship. You lean on that God whom you worship, and He's fair, and He's just, and He's merciful. He will not fool you. He will not deceive you. He will give you a miracle that you think is a miracle, and that'll help you. It won't pull you to the other side and drown you in the wrong side. So have that confidence. And that's the reason we are stating this whole seminar. I'm giving you information after information so that at some point your faith will sit on some evidence that does not shake. That's the key. Sit there. And once you sit there, recognize that this God will never deceive you. He's a God of truth.
Thank you. Those were the questions we had so far. So hopefully, as we go along, there will be more questions coming in.
There were other questions, so let me point one or two that we've had before. For example, there were two questions regarding creation. One of them asked, "Did God alone create the world in 7 days?" So there are two questions there. Number one is, did God create the world? There are actually three questions. Did God create? Number two, did God alone create? And number three, did God create the world in 7 days? So let's do one by one, because there's another question that came and said, did God create this world in literal days? So the 7 days will be literal. So did God create? I don't know. But if we look at the evidence, the weight of evidence seems to show, and in fact, it's very strongly show that this world could not have come out by itself. Had to come from an agency. Here's the agency. You can call him God. We saw that in the logical analysis on day one. Did God create in 7 days? Actually, it is six, but on the seventh day, he rested. So 6 days of creation. By the way, where did we get the week from? We know what the day is, one rotation of the earth around its axis. We know what the month is, one revolution of the moon around the earth. We know what the year is, one revolution of the earth around the sun. Where did we get the week from? So when you look back in history, there's a museum of clocks, not too far from where I am here in the next state. They have a museum of clocks and watches. So they have to do time. Time in, I think Latin is called hor. Horology is a study of time. So they do a study of time, and that's their question too. We have all these things. Where did we get the week? So they did a study going back. There are two possible sources. Definitely one of them is the Hebrew scripture, the Hebrew ancient writing. That's the first place we got the week. And the week is divided into, it has a formula, not just 7 days. 6 plus 1. That's the formula. So when you look at the week from there, then we understand that the week is described there for the first time. And also the week came from the creation. So we can deduce that if we say God created, he created then in its description, 6 days and rested the seventh. That's the description of the 7 days. So 7 days. God, 7 days. Alone, well, we know that the Spirit with the uppercase S was also there in the first 2 or 3 verses of the Bible. The Spirit hovered over the water. When you go to the New Testament, we find that the description of Jesus is that he was an agency. So when we use the word God, we are not using only one entity, We are using more than, referring to more than one entity. And so God alone, yes, God alone, but that God is Trinity. And we're going to study that later on. Remember, we said we would. Yep. Trinity. So it's not just one, more than one. Now, the other question was literal days. Was it literal days? 24 hours, only one day? So we make the other theory because some people say it's not literal days. It has to be ages. The Hebrew word is yom. Yom can be day, it can also mean age. So why can't we say ages? Then we can have an age going for to maybe 1,000 or 1,000,000 years, and then we can make it into the theory of evolution. Then we can have what is called theistic evolution. Theos, God. God did the creation via evolution. So that's the other theory. That's why we are asking whether it's literal days or ages. Now, we can address that. And like I said, we'll make two theories. And I'm not going to go to all the points, but I'll just mention some so you can start. You should do your own study, by the way. Don't get spoon fed here. Here's one way of looking at it. If it is ages, that's theory on one side, and the other is it's 24 hours. Then when we look into the description, this day is divided into two parts. Each day is divided into two parts. First, the night, Ereb, that's the Hebrew word. And second, the daytime, light time, Boker. Ereb, Boker makes one day. It's not just day. Like the week is divided into 6 plus 1, the day is divided into nighttime and daytime. So that's very clear. So now let us see if that fits into an age. So let's say the age is just 1,000 years. Is that okay? 1,000 years. You can even make it 1 year. It'll still work. So let's say the age, one age is 1,000 years. So are we saying that the first 500 years is all dark? And then came the next 500 years of light, and that made one day? If your day is one age, it doesn't seem to fit at all. The reason is because in 2 or 3 days without the sun shining on the earth, we will go into a deep freeze and die. And if we had 6 or 7 days of just sunshine, full blast, we will melt all that ice and then we'll go to the other side and burn up. So 500 years of night followed by 500 years of daylight, it's impossible. So it does not fit. So the age in reference to that does not fit. Then in the book of Exodus, the same word day is used for saying the seventh day is a day of rest. On that day, you must not do any work. Not you, not the animals with you who are working. Nobody does, no servants, no helpers, nothing. Nobody do any work one whole day. So 1,000 years of no work, how does that fit? No, it just doesn't fit, my friends. Another way of looking at it, I'm just giving you something to think about. If one day is 1,000 years, how many days is 1 year? Let's say 360. Okay. 1 year is 360 days. But we are saying one day is 1,000 years. Then what was the age of Adam when he died? It says 930 years. So 930 years, each of them has 360 days, and each of those days is 1,000. Oh, my goodness. He didn't live for only 930 years. Then according to the age, if it is the age, then he lived for, I think, millions of years. Friends, it won't fit. So if you want to be consistent with the word Ereb Boker in the Bible, which is starting off in Genesis 1, then you have to use the same word wherever the word is used, unless the context says it is the age. Like say, in the days of David, or in the days of Moses, in the days of Samuel. That's a different word. You can see in the context. But when it says 1 day and 2 days, it can't be ages. It has to be Ereb Boker, which is the 24-hour day. So now you go ahead and think about that and see whether the day is really ages or if it is one day. And we've answered all the others. Any questions by now?
Thank you. Yeah, I think somebody put their hand up. Brother Mark put their hand up. I think maybe they want to ask a question.
Yes.
Potter is me again.
Oh, sorry, Elder Mark.
Good. How do we explain the 18 absent years of Jesus in the Bible? And here's my reason for asking the question. Books like the Aquarian Gospel, the 18 absent years of Jesus, and the Gospel versus the Gospel challenge we Christians to explain that reason. Can you help us here? Thank you very much.
No, I didn't get your question. So just once again, and once again, a little slowly. You were saying there is 18 years that are not described in the New Testament. All right. So
Yeah.
we're dealing with the 18 years. What's the question about the 18 years?
So explain that for us.
Is that what?
What what is the mystery behind that? How do we explain that to non-Christians? Because they are challenging.
Okay. Okay. Number one question is, do you need to explain it? Do you need to explain it? In other words,
I think so.
if you don't explain it, what does that do to a person's salvation?
Hang on a minute here.
Say it again.
Yeah, let me explain here. Because the 18 absent years of Jesus.
Yes, not don't say absent is not described. It's there. He lived for 18 years. Yes.
Let me first bring up my question. Then you can correct me.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Because those times, that period.
Yes.
Understanding that there's a book like books like the Aquarian Gospel.
Yes.
The Gospel versus the Gospel.
Yes.
You understand that throws a challenge to Christians to explain that.
All right. Here's what you are saying, that there is another piece of literature.
That's right.
Apart from the New Testament that is describing those 18 years.
That's right.
Shall we read that and also put that inside here? What if some statements from there are contradicting what is in the New Testament? What shall we do? Yes, that's a big question in regards if there's any other writing. Now, remember what we did to the New Testament itself. We asked, first of all, what is the type of literature of the writing? Is it legendary? Is it mythological? Is it folktale? Is it historical? Is it ancient or is it later? When did the writer write this regarding that? Was he living very close to those 18 years? Or whether he was writing for a few hundred years or maybe 1,000 years later? You know, when you do that, you realize that whatever is written as, like, for example, the Aquinas, there are other writings also. And in some of the apocryphal writings, there's a suggestion, not apocryphal, New Testament apocryphal writings, there's a suggestion of a description there. But here's what you will find, and I think you will do this if you look at it deeply and ask the honest, simple, basic questions. Is that established as the historical writing in the same level as the New Testament? If it is in the same level, we can put them together and let them have a fight. If it's not at the same level, and we cannot address that and say that it is really solidly historical, then if it says A and if the New Testament says B, then I'm sorry for A, we will have to go for B, because B is the historical one. So we start there. So when you look at some other writings, and there are plenty of writings that to look at, because there are many other challenges that come to the New Testament, one of the first things is to do this. What kind of literature is that? Is it really historical? And where were the authors? Are they close? And you'll find all of the authors of them hundreds and thousands of years later. So the credibility is gone. The second question we asked of the New Testament, is there anything in the writing that allows us to test you so that we can know that you came from a supernatural source? Test that writing also in this way. You will find not a single other writing that can ever stand to that test. Is there anything in the writing that will tell us that it is a supernatural piece of literature? You don't find it there. So, why will we put those and the New Testament together? We should not. In the beginning, we can, only as a neutral inquirer. But as a neutral inquirer, we ask all these honest, basic questions, and you'll find they don't stand. So if that doesn't mean you dismiss them, you can learn stuff from them. But if they say A while the New Testament says B, then A must be discarded. In other words, we've found the gold standard already. Fair enough?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I think those are the questions so far, except from the ones that we had that we're going to address later on. I think those were the questions for today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand if you would like to ask them yourself.
Okay, there was one more. I have all these questions in my hand.
Yeah,
the 30 questions that you
they're
have.
building up.
So we will look at maybe one more. There was another question. Are there other supreme beings? The word other and supreme don't go together. There can be only one supreme being. So the question really is, are there other beings who claim to be supreme, and are they relevant? And that came under the study of pluralism. And we saw, no, there can be only one supreme being. But we also asked whether that supreme being can be one unit or three, because the Christians have Trinity. And so the question of supreme being also comes into question with Trinity. And we said we're going to respond to that. And I told the organizers that I will respond to the question of Trinity and also why I am a Seventh-day Adventist when the questioner tells me that she will be there. So we'll wait for that. So they'll tell me. There's another question. Is it bad to believe in manifestations? Now, the word manifestation must be understood, first of all. It's very specific in one sense. Manifestation is not just something happening. Manifestations are something unusual that a person can do to show you that it is unusual. And it comes mostly in New Agers. New Agers will manifest stuff, and they really do it. Unusual stuff. Light here and a light there, and some weird sounds, lots of stuff they can do. The question here is it bad to believe in manifestations? So if we are describing manifestations in a generic, broad term as something unusual, there's nothing bad or good about it. But if we are talking about manifestations that the New Agers are talking about, then we have to address it by the background from where it's coming. In other words, the background is that they are New Agers. So we have to study a little bit about New Age, New Agers who believe in this and that. And by the way, New Ager is not one religion, so it's kind of spread out so broad that it's hard to make a defined description. No, but there are some things in the New Age ideas that allow manifestation to be a sign that that's the truth. Got it? A New Ager will say that when there's a manifestation, that means that is from the correct source. It is from the right source. It is from the godly source. That's why actually a true New Ager, and here's one of the ways, at least among themselves, the orthodox or the strict New Ager will say, you have to have a confrontation with Jesus. You have to have a confrontation. Jesus must come to you at some point, not just as a voice, but as a being. If you have seen Jesus, for example, if you're sleeping and Jesus comes to you and he stands beside you in those beautiful robes of light, and he speaks to you in a very kind, sweet voice, and he tells you you're supposed to follow him, then that is one of the manifestations that you can count and say, yep, I'm a new ager. So now that becomes a basis for saying you have the truth. It sounds very captivating, and it's say who can simply dismiss it? You don't dismiss it, but you look at it very carefully. Where do we get the idea that a manifestation is the basis to decide the truth? And you will find that that is not in the Bible. The Bible says only one factor will start you on the search for the truth, and that is it in line with the Bible? Test the spirits out. So when the New Agers, when they say manifestations are the thing by which you will make your decision, that itself is against the Bible. Because the Bible says what is written down to the law and to the testimony of what is written down, if it is not in line with that, no, there is no light. So although the picture is one of beautiful light of Jesus, unless the ideas are in line with the whole of scriptures, that light is not light. So I would suggest manifestations, you check them out. Manifestations by themselves are not bad, but if the manifestations are telling you that the manifestation is the basis of whether it's true or false, no, that cannot be it. So manifestations, I've met some people, yeah. In fact, there was one of the friends who said, I will show you manifestation. I said, fair enough, you can show me. So he was quite surprised because I come out a little bit as like a, conservative. How can a conservative Christian allow to be shown manifestations? I said, sure. But I said, I will judge the manifestation not by the manifestation. I will judge the manifestation by what you tell me the manifestation means. And he agreed to that. He said, that's fair enough. So he didn't show me the manifestations because for him, the manifestations is the sign. And for me, I'm saying, yeah, you can show me the manifestation, but it will not be the sign. So have I answered that or not very clearly? You can, if you have asked the question, you can ask it again and tell me where I have not clarified the question of manifestations. Any other question? Not yet? Okay,
No.
One more from the list.
Yes, that's fine.
That's okay. One more from the list. The Bible states that in the beginning God said, let there be light. Yet he created the sun, moon, and stars on the fourth day. Why? You can see the why question coming up. Yes, why did he do that? So my first question, do you think he made a mistake? Otherwise, why you ask why? He made a mistake. He should not do light on one day and sun, moon, and stars on fourth day. Why did he do that? In other words, you are telling me that he made a mistake. Or you are saying it doesn't sound really reasonable. Again, you're saying a negative thing. Can you see that? Why almost always points to something negative. If a negative was not there, you don't ask the why question. So let's pull back. He did create light on day 1. He did create sun, moon, and stars on day 4. So I really want to know how come he didn't create, for example, the sun, moon, and stars on day 1? That would be a question, not why. Could he have created sun, moon, and stars on day 1? Of course he could have. But he did light first. So is there an explanation? I really don't think there's an explanation. However, when you look at the facts and what the source of the light would be, there is no real explanation that will satisfy everyone, but we can make an attempt. So I am confessing, I'm not going to give you an answer. I'm only going to make an attempt to say There might be a reason. And so, even if this question is not answered, it will not do anything to your faith. You can still believe in God and believe in his plan of salvation that he put through Jesus. So here's one way of looking at it. When God came to this to create this earth, the first thing he said was light. Now, I'm going to do a little physics here, particle physics. Light is made up of photons. Photons are, we don't know whether it's a particle or a wave of energy. We don't know. Get the picture? We don't know. So on when God created, or he said, let there be light, he formed a certain phenomenon that we still today don't know whether it's a wave particle, wave or a particle, just a wave of energy or a particle. And even that particle, we now realize it's a particle without any mass. It's a massless particle. So that's what God created. Now, here's the thing. When you do that, you do have that photon as a possible source of energy. It's a wave of energy. So that wave of energy is forming the light. From that, he started the creation of actual matter. Do you know that is the theory of the Big Bang? That the Big Bang actually started out with energy. And energy encountered what is called a field. And when it encountered the field, it slowed down, and energy cannot slow down, so it changed into mass. Energy became mass. So what if God was bringing light, the photons, on the day one, and from the photons now he's going to create the world, the atmosphere, the material. And then on day 4, that same energy, now he's shifting it out from energy to matter and mass, and then he made that mass into the sun, moon, and stars. Now I said, this is not a real answer, but it could give you an idea that there are two different things actually happening. So it's okay. He can start with light on day 1, and then he can shift off on day 4 to sun, moon, and stars. And they are actual stuff that will stay with us all the time. He could have made the energy stay with us all the time, but here he made the sun as the place where the photons will come to the earth. Today we get photons from the sun. That's the only source of photons for earth. And if we don't get photons, the earth will see, all life on earth will go vanish completely away. We'll die. In other words, God started it out that way and then put the source into the sun on the day 4. I don't know whether it really happened. I'm just thinking out loud from particle physics, and it gives you some idea that there could be a reason why he did those two things. Reasonable? If you asked it, you can. If it's not clear, you can ask again.
Thank you. I think we have a question.
Yes.
And this is from the previous ones again. It's asking about, it said Hebrews Bible says that Yeshua, or yeah, I think it's Yeshua, Messiah, was it the real name of Jesus in the Bible?
Yes. The simple answer is yes. By the way, Jesus, the name Jesus was not just to Jesus. They were Jesus's as names of other people too. That is why he is identified in the Arabic language as Isa bin Maryam, because they're identifying which Jesus this is. There were other Jesuses too. So the name Jesus is found there in the New Testament as pointing to Jesus. In fact, the angel said to Joseph, when he is born, you will call him Jesus, because Jesus was a proper noun in those days. So it is. I'm not sure what the question was. Is it this, or have I not got the question?
Yeah, I think that was the question. Maybe just asking if that's Jesus, and I think I'm not
Yes.
too sure because it was previously. So if the person is here, maybe.
Yes, and
Yeah.
remember the word Yeshua is Hebrew, and there were Yeshuas in those days. But specifically this one, when connected with the question of Messiah, that made him Jesus, the Lamb of God.
Thank you. I think that's the question. The question again, I think that was the one that you said that we're going to answer again, probably in the session where we're going to answer the other questions about the human evil again. And that's about the questions I have so far. If anybody has a question or anything, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. But yeah, I think we have like just a couple of minutes before we finish. So
Oh, by the way, yesterday, we've been doing it for a few days now. Who is the subject of Isaiah 53?
oh yeah, I remember that one.
Did
We had
anyone
to
do the test?
go
Can anyone raise the hand who did the test like we said we would do? We would use the word and, put the word there, Israel or Jesus, into the he. Did anyone do it? No. Okay. Tomorrow I'm going to do two of the verses then for you. Hey,
Okay.
you should not ask to be spoon fed. You should do it yourself. When you do it yourself, you get the maximum out of it. But since you're not doing it, I will agree. I'll spoon feed you a little bit. Although I don't want to do it, I'll do it.
So
Okay.
for tomorrow then, as you said, as Dr. Pandit said, make sure you all read Isaiah and we come up tomorrow hopefully with the answer for that. So thank you so much, Dr. Pandit, for today's session. It was really interesting. And thank you for addressing some of the questions as well that we asked previously. And thank you all for joining and taking part. So the topic for tomorrow is going to be the book Unique. So come and see what book we're going to talk about, and also make sure that you read about the Isaiah. And we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow at 7 p.m. So please, if you have any questions, I'm going to put a link in the chat. Please post them so we can review the questions for tomorrow or even for today, or any questions you may have, we can review them as we go along. And thank you all and have a nice evening.
All right.